NXT will be undergoing a whole bunch of changes in the next month, and we're going to be following it closely. I'm Ryan Joe, and I run MinutesToBellTime.com, a website and database tracking pro wrestling from around the world. On today's show, we're talking about NXT from last night, and we'll discuss the changes that we're already seeing. We also have headlines for the last 24 hours. The NXT guru, John Smith, is in the house, and this is the Daily Wrestling News Show for August 25th, 2021, where we sort through all the bullshit in wrestling news to find you the truth. And John, welcome to the show today.
NXT guru, I like it.
Yeah, well, you know, you're this on the Essential Wrestling Podcast. You are the senior correspondent, and I wanted to fill out your resume, give you a new title and everything. So you've been promoted to the NXT guru over here.
When is that correspondent title going to actually get me sent to NXT to correspond?
Yeah, that's a good. You know what? You have to take that up with the Essential Wrestling Podcast people. You're just the guru to me. But you know, as a correspondent, you would probably have been kicked out of NXT these past couple of days, because that's one of the news items, and I didn't mention that to you ahead of time. They have been kicking people out of the Capitol Wrestling Center if they see that you're tweeting or, you know, filling the dirt sheets with the spoilers. But despite that, the news is still getting out. So a lot of stuff that we saw on last night's episode, if you had been following the news, and unfortunately you probably got spoiled a little bit, but if you remain spoiler free, then there was a whole bunch of stuff on the show. What did you think of the show last night?
Oh, it was fun. Much more eventful than they have been the past few weeks, because they were leading up to a big pay-per-view, and now, you know, they're kind of hitting the reset button, and yep. You know, we're seeing what different feuds we got to look forward to, and you know, we still got the Hit Row and Legato thing, and that's got a new twist to it with Lucha Lopez getting involved. So, yeah, it was a fun night.
Yeah, it was a fun night, and I do agree that it's kind of like, you know, when we started hearing the rumblings about NXT going through its big changes. We're not quite there yet, but we can already start seeing at least a talent shift, right? Like Karrion Kross is gone now. Now that, you know, the new champion Samoa Joseph, and we'll be talking about that, and then you see the new talent kind of like flushing in here. So one of the people is Kaylee Ray, and she made her debut at TakeOver. She had a quick win over Valentina Feroz last night. PW Insider reported that she is officially a full-time member of the NXT brand going forward. So we should be seeing more of her as we move through. So Kaylee Ray looks like she's got her guns set at Raquel Gonzalez, but also Frankie Monet, another recent talent. She also has her sights set on Raquel Gonzalez. So
yeah, it seems like they're hyping up the Kaylee thing a little bit more, because they're talking about how long she had that title and stuff. So it seems like maybe Frankie might be like a pit stop kind of championship match in a couple weeks, leading up to the next pay-per-view, you know, a couple months from now, where Kaylee Ray gets the shot at it.
Yeah, I could see that as Frankie being sort of a stepping stone in that way, right? So with Cross and Cole potentially both gone, Johnny Gargano is going to be positioned as the top heel on the brand. And now what's interesting is that we've heard that from PW Insider. They had a whole bunch of NXT news that came out. With Gargano being positioned as the top heel, it's interesting, because on the show last night, you had a whole bunch of people that were going out after Samoa Joe, so you would think one of them would be the top heel. O'Reilly's clearly a face, but Peter Dunne and La Knight, they're both heels, so you know, you would think maybe the top heel would get involved, and maybe he will in a few weeks. But Johnny Gargano certainly doing some of the best stuff of his career, right?
Yeah, but he's almost too likable at this point, where like, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. Come on, we're friends here. You know, all that stuff. Like we can't help but like him. So, you know, playing the heel, fine, but I don't think he can, you know, really be that like top hated guy. And I'm looking towards Ridge Holland, to be honest with you, to be like the next formidable opponent for Samoa Joe. It seems like they're building him up really strong right now.
Right. Brian Henkel says he just doesn't want Vince interfering with NXT because they have such good talent. It's a great show last night. Yeah, I think that's going to be a theme as we talk about NXT. You know, it's tough when we see call-ups and our guys don't do as well as they did on NXT and stuff. But as pertains to Ridge Holland, I kind of agree. You think he's going to jump the line with Pete Dunne? Is that going to be a feud we have here coming up? Because Pete Dunne is also, you know, in the right circumstance, he's a great babyface. And you could see that this thing that they have, they're building Holland up. He's got a match. He beat Thatcher last night. He's going to have a match with Ciampa, and he's probably going to roll through Ciampa. Why wouldn't Ridge Holland be the guy? And yet Pete Dunne is kind of trying to wedge his way in there. So you could see there a little bit of conflict there brewing, and maybe those two actually get in some sort of dispute, and then that ends up being what leads to whatever title match is the next takeover.
Yeah, we could end up seeing something like when Randy got turned on by the Evolution back in the day, where, you know, Pete Dunne is all of a sudden just turned on by the other three, and we get to face Pete, and then hopefully he's got a belt to hang out of his mouth, and then we're good to go.
Okay, so I would love that. I would absolutely love if we had like a little. It could just be an online, like a Twitter vignette or something. But you just, you know, you've got the match coming up, Ridge Holland versus Samoa Joseph at some point down the road. It's being advertised and everything, but we get a little online vignette of Pete Dunne sitting down talking with Randy Orton. You don't get to see it or anything, but then the next week on NXT, you just have Pete Dunne go like this, you know, and put the thumbs down, and that'd be fun. That would be fun.
Yeah,
a little Easter egg. You can do anything with Pete Dunne. Pete Dunne, he is great. So I agree with you there. Some other news that's been talked about is, you know, they talk about a whole new look and feel for NXT coming, new logos and things like that. Well, one of the stories that has been floating around is what's going on with Full Sail University. Are they still in some sort of partnership with Full Sail? PW Insider reported yesterday that the relationship with Full Sail is not over. But there are no plans to move back to Full Sail during the pandemic, but that the door is open in the event the pandemic ends and they want to do that, make that change. But there are still students from Full Sail working on all aspects of the NXT tapings. It's kind of a cool thing that they do with NXT, and it's the developmental brand, and yet they're developing sort of, tomorrow's adults, kind of the workforce of tomorrow.
Yeah, actually, a few years ago, I was working at a restaurant, and there was a young host who was going to Full Sail to do exactly that, and he's working with NXT, with WWE right now as we speak. He's in our pick'em pool, in the money pool. The name Irving. He works down at Full Sail, or he goes to Full Sail and works or interns for NXT, which is pretty cool.
So you're saying all this time we've had an inside guy, and he didn't let us know?
Well. Last year we thought maybe something was going on because he was owning everything for the first 6 months, but then he ended up dropping off after a while. So I mean, I'm sure he's got some inside intel, but there's no way that they're letting some kid in college know what their future plans are. So
right, he's not in the meetings with Hunter and Sean. Okay,
doubtful.
All right. Well, Adam Cole is all the news, and it seems like every day we hear his contract expired yesterday, his contract's expiring today. Multiple news outlets reported yesterday that Adam Cole's contract is officially up this Friday, and that WWE is expecting to put another offer in front of him before Friday, and then no discussions will really formally take place with any outside party until after his contract expires. That's kind of a big no-no. So companies don't really negotiate with any talent that's coming available. They have to wait until they are available. So, but WWE is going to put another great offer in front of Cole this week. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I don't expect them to let him get into real negotiations with anybody else. I think they would be silly to let that happen. But I mean, he is the guy who puts the D in DMD, so maybe they sent a message to him through her.
I have not heard that joke yet, but here you are.
I came up with that one on my own. I'm very proud of that one.
Well, not to completely skip over everything that happened on NXT last night, but we did get part of the news coming out of the show is all the matches that we have lined up for next week. And it's kind of a double-edged sword when they go to a taped format like they're doing for these next couple of weeks. It's unfortunate because a lot of times the spoilers get out, but at the same time, they also announce a whole bunch of stuff because they're planning ahead. And so we have Ilya Dragunov. He's going to be on NXT next week. We have Tommaso Ciampa versus Ridge Holland. We have Roddy Strong doing an open challenge. We're going to circle back to that in a second. Johnny Gargano versus La Knight. Kyle O'Reilly versus Duke Hudson. Going back to Roddy Strong, why is Roderick Strong doing an open challenge? It didn't work last time. He lost last time. So I don't know what he's doing here.
And now it could be anybody, so it might end up being Odyssey Jones or something.
That's exactly what I was thinking, is Odyssey Jones comes out and squashes them. And but the worst part of it is Roddy Strong, they're building him up for the Cruiserweight championship match with Kushida, but Kushida's not cleared to compete, so he was not at the taping on Monday or either of the two tapings yesterday, so he's going to be out for at least 3 weeks. So I guess they can afford to beat Roddy Strong a couple of times before they give him a big win on his way to wrestling Kushida.
Right.
But one of the things that we had said, in the beginning is that NXT is going through a bunch of changes, and when I look at this list of stuff for next week, you have Ridge Holland that's going to be on the show next week, and he's fairly new talent in terms of us seeing him in the ring. And then you also have Duke Hudson, who's getting a key match with Kyle O'Reilly. Roderick Strong's open challenge is certainly open to either a Carmelo Hayes or an Odyssey Jones answering it. Dragunov is new on NXT, so we're seeing a lot of the newer players kind of jump in on NXT next week. So you can tell that they're building for the future, kind of moving away from those really established characters wrestling against each other.
It's kind of how it's always been, though. They've established guys, and then they've moved on and then established new guys. And maybe it's just happening more in bulk right now. But it's always been the real land of opportunity when it comes to like WWE is NXT, not the main roster. So that's anybody that goes through there, I trust that they're going to end up doing something good there. But then you never know once they move forward after that. Yeah.
Well, like Duke Hudson is the Duke Hudson match is the one that's kind of sticking off the page to me. Is like, here's a guy who he's actually had a few false starts so far with the company. He was on main roster right at the beginning of the pandemic. He was Brandon Vank, and he was MVP was actually managing him for a quick minute on the main roster, and then they pulled him back, and then they debuted him here as Duke Hudson, and it felt to me like, to get a match with Kyle O'Reilly, it felt like you had to blow through a few guys first, because Kyle is kind of in that top guy status. But Duke Hudson, he's right there with Kyle. So I don't know if we see a Duke Hudson get a big victory over Kyle O'Reilly next week. It's going to be bad for Kyle. It's going to be great for Duke, I think.
Yeah, I don't see that happening though. But I think they'll end up giving them a nice 2-segment match. They'll get a commercial break in between, and it'll showcase what Duke Hudson can do against a more seasoned veteran.
Right. Yep. Brian mentioning that he thinks the cruiserweight division needs a little shot in the arm. Yeah, I think it's hard when we haven't seen Kushida in a while, and Roddy Strong. I feel like he got his debut as part of Diamond Mine, and then they had to cut Tyler Rust. They've got great cruiserweights, but most of them are the top guys, right? You got Pete Dunne is kind of there, and so is Kyle actually. So there's plenty of people they could interject into that and make it really, really strong. But so
yeah, you know what the real shot in the arm would be is if they brought Enzo back. That would some crazy heel heat if they brought him back. Or maybe he would come back to Cheers. Who knows? Just to be able to do that whole "my name is Enzo Amore" thing again with the crowd.
I feel like Enzo is a guy. He'd come back in, he'd probably get cheered, and then he would open his mouth, and then they would boo the crap out of him. Yeah. They're like, "Oh, right, this guy."
It also depends on what city that they have him come back in.
Right. Right. Well, one of the angles that we've been following on NXT for the last several months is the $1 Million Championship, and I feel like based on the way the things went last night, that story seems to have come to a close, at least the Ted DiBiase part of it. Because Ted DiBiase he rode off in his limo last night with the $1 Million Championship, the official one. He gave Cameron Grimes a toy, a replica. Do you think we're going to see like a new version of the $1 Million Championship here, John?
I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned it earlier, and I think it's perfect to have like another singles title that people can go after, and it doesn't have to look like the old one. It could be a nice big dollar sign in the middle. It doesn't have to be all gaudy, but it'll I think that would be nice because it's already, like you said, on the page as like an official title with lineage on the WWE website. So now we have to have our petition to have it added to the PWP as an official belt instead of just a regular singles match.
Yeah, and John's referring to Pro Wrestling Pick'em, which there's always a commercial for Pro Wrestling Pick'em on the show, and it's actually right there in the center of the logo is right there in the center. Isn't it a title already? Like, weren't they considered title matches? I hope so.
not on the website because Al does not recognize it as an official title.
Okay, well, yes, we're going to have words with Mr. Al Carl. So, all right. Well, the Index wedding is scheduled for September 14th, and it's what new can they do in a wrestling wedding that we haven't already seen, John? What new can they do?
I guess the new thing would be Dexter Lumis actually speaking his vows. You think that could happen?
Yeah, that's interesting. We actually see Dexter. That is a huge payoff. The fact that we've never seen Dexter speak, the moment that he says something is going to be a big, big watershed moment for that character.
Well, hopefully he's got a big lung full of helium when he does it.
Yeah, so we can find out he speaks like Casey Catanzaro. Maybe she could just do the overdub the voice,
Right.
And Danny Burch returned from injury last night. These Danny and Oni never lost the tag team titles, and now Danny is back. So
yeah, that story writes itself. So it looks like MSK's next opponent's got to be them.
Right. I see Andre Thomas making comments here. He says, no Enzo. He's not a fan of Enzo. And he says, add a TV title and defend it every single week. I agree that sometimes those TV titles, they just need to be on TV every week. And I don't even think they should be on the pay-per-view. But when companies have TV titles, I think it's really cool that what they should do is they should have them. And after you hold it and defend it a certain number of times, you should vacate it and get a shot at the big belt. That's what they have tried to do with NWA, but I've never seen it actually come to fruition. But I think that's
a great idea. Having a belt that you defend it a certain amount of times and then you get an automatic world title shot afterwards. That'd be great.
Yes, yeah, and so it kind of like puts a belt around maybe not the number one contender, but the rising star, and it's a really good story because you get to let's say it's 10 matches that you defend the title. You get to number 9 and people are really behind it, number 9, and then they lose or whatever, and they have to start over, and maybe, all kinds of cool stuff can happen. So
yeah.
And Andre says, yeah, same thing. He agrees. No pay-per-view for that belt. And I think that's fine. It gives you something for the TV audience every week to know that they're going to get. Carmelo Hayes wins the Breakout tournament, John. All of us are standing there. We're hearing the 30-year, under 30, over 6 foot tall, got to be at least 220. Odyssey Jones, he checks those boxes. Some of them he checks twice. And so I couldn't believe that he didn't win the tournament. But Carmelo Hayes, I guess they think they've got something with Hayes, and I know that they probably know they have something with Jones. So were you shocked? I was kind of surprised.
I had mentioned yesterday I halfway saw this coming. I just didn't have balls big enough to pull the trigger on switching my pick because I called Odyssey from round 1, and once I saw him, I thought that he would win it. But he's just so over that he doesn't need to win it, and that's what I was saying last night. He was still my pick, but I said I would not be surprised if Carmelo Hayes took it down, and they did it the right way. They didn't make Odyssey Jones look weak by taking that pin, and now Carmelo Hayes shows that he can do the Raw roll-up. So, he's got a big future ahead of him.
That's a lot of wins that he can get on Monday nights now. So, and then I guess finally the big news, the final news out of NXT last night is Lucha Lopez's debut. So we had another new talent come out. It's not the first time we've seen her. She did lose to Frankie Monet in her encore presentation of her world premiere a couple of months ago, or a month ago, or whenever it was. But she definitely has something now. She is going to be Legado del Fantasma's answer to B-Fab on Hit Row.
Yeah, I like the idea of this, and I wonder if they're going to make her like Santos's girlfriend or wife, or one of the other two's girlfriend or something, or if she's just going to be like a hired gun situation. I'm curious about the story there.
It was interesting, and like we just talked about for men over 6 foot, 220, whatever. I think she's bigger than Santos Escobar. When I saw her last night, she's there's something, and I don't mean in like a big way, like an Odyssey Jones is big kind of way. I just mean she's a tank. It looks like. So at least that's the impression I got last night. I might be wrong, but
the jacket she was wearing didn't do her any favors in the feminine category because it had the big shoulder pads involved. But I've seen other pictures of her. She's not much of a tank, but she's thick.
Okay. All right. Well, that's what I have for anything else on NXT last night you want to bring up, John?
Just about the tweeting thing that you were saying, where they were kicking people out and whatnot. Like that's like wearing a raincoat in a hurricane, man. Like you can't stop people from getting the results out. The only way you stop that is not having fans or not taping it. So I don't know what the point of kicking people out during the show would be, because they're just going to do it after anyway.
And I think you're 100% right on that. And I'll add that spoilers can do one or two things. They can set people up to not watch your show, or they can set people up to watch your show. And this has been proven out in wrestling. Tony Schiavone is the most perfect example. He spoiled the Mick Foley first title win, and everybody changed the channel to watch that moment. So if you put on a really great show, the spoilers are only going to help you attract more viewers. For instance, we all knew Rhea Ripley was beating Shayna Baszler for that championship belt back in December of 2019, and it was the most watched episode of NXT that they ever had on USA Network. So, I mean, a spoiler, and that wasn't a spoiler, but it was like the anticipation, the build. We all knew it was going to happen, and it happened. And so the spoiler, or when you know what's going to happen, it leads to more viewers and a better watched show, I guess I will say. So,
right.
All right. Well, with that, John, we have more headlines and stuff to talk about in the second part of the show. But right now, we're going to take a quick 1-minute break, and I'm going to tell you all the different ways that you can support the show or see more of our faces. So stick with us, and we'll be right back live in another minute or so. If you love the Daily Wrestling News Show, then I want to tell you how you can support us. First, check out bodyslamclothes.com. You can get a variety of shirts for just $20, and all of them come in the super soft style, and the price you see includes all sizes and shipping. Get 10% off 2 or more shirts with the promo code SHIRTS10. Go to bodyslamclothes.com right now to check it out. And join Joey Jarzenka, Ian Schreier, and Rob DeLuca on Monday nights for the Primetime Rundown. They take you through the world of sports, and the show kicks off each Monday at 7 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And each Tuesday, Al Carl hosts the Essential Wrestling Podcast alongside John Smith, myself, John DeConnie, and Gary Mahaffey. It's another week of updates and highlights in the world of wrestling. Here are our analysis on who we think is going to win the week's matches. Coverage begins at 6 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And Pro Wrestling Pick'em. It's a place where you can join or host a Pick'em League to test your predictive skills in the world of pro wrestling. Create an account and join a league now at ProWrestlingPick'em.com so you can play against your friends or play against the universe. And the Body Slam Brigade newsletter, currently going out to over 4,200 people each Friday. It consolidates all the top stories in professional wrestling into a quick-to-read email written by me for you for free. Sign up now at bodyslambrigade.com. And, of course, this show, the Daily Wrestling News Show. We're here every day, Monday through Thursday, and occasionally on Friday. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or watch us live on Facebook and YouTube at 10 a.m. This is the Daily Wrestling News Show, and we thank you for your support. right. Well, I wanted to leave us up in this view because there were some great comments that came in during the commercial, and one of them is Andre Thomas saying, "Is this the picture-in-picture moment of the show?" Which is a joke between Andre and I, because in the Minutes to Bell Time conversation thread in the Facebook group, he knows how much I despise picture-in-picture. I say it's not canon for the show, but had I left my screen up the entire time, you would have seen me run to the fridge to get a drink. So there you go. Also, Andre Thomas says Odyssey Jones reminds him of Willie Mack, and Carmelo Hayes reminds him of Chris Bay. So if you want to know what those talents will look like in a few years, I guess watch Impact on Thursdays.
I would equate Chris Bay more with Isaiah Swerve Scott, to be honest with you. But yeah, I like the Willie Mack and Odyssey comparison.
I think that you're right with Chris Bay, man. Whenever his contract is up, he's going to be highly sought after. I think New Japan's going to want him. I think Ring of Honor's going to want him. I think AEW is going to want him. And if they can get him in that NXT system and put him aside Swerve Scott, I think that's a perfect pairing as well. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll happen, though, because Bay is part of the Bullet Club now. So maybe that might attract him to go overseas or just stay in a spot where he can still be part of the Bullet Club,
Yeah, you are correct about that. And I will also raise you Finn Balor, AJ Styles, the Good Brothers, and Adam Cole are all members, and some of them leaders of the Bullet Club. So it's happened before. So
yeah, well, he's got a while to get up to the level of an AJ Styles. So
he does have some time ahead of him before that. But you have to start at day one, and that's what WWE is going to call their January 1st, 2022 pay-per-view. It's going to be called WWE Day One. Makes sense. It's January 1st, so it's the first day of the year. So,
yeah, that's when I thought that Walter was going to be losing his title, because he would have finally hit 1,000 days. But I can't believe they didn't do it. I can't believe they didn't have him keep it for 1,000 days. They were so close. Now, like, the next best thing is Roman Reigns, if they wanted to do that. And we're looking at May 2023 for him to lose the title, and I can't see that happening.
I don't know. I mean, you're right. With Roman Reigns, I think I thought about this as well, and I thought maybe the reason they had Walter lose is because they didn't want him to have that accomplishment. They do want Roman to have it, and that's why they kind of made the switch there. That's if they're all working on the same sheet of music, though. That's not typically the case.
That's two more title defenses in a row. That's 3 defenses in a row at WrestleMania. That would be unprecedented if that happened.
Yeah, that's 2 more triple threats with Daniel Bryan in the main event. Andre Thomas says, for some reason, Bay doesn't seem like he belongs in the Bullet Club. And then Brian Henkel is asking, do you think WWE or NXT can ever get their hands on Switchblade? I don't know. Jay White, he can kind of write his own check. I feel like he can wrestle anywhere he wants, whenever he wants. And WWE would be an exclusive for him. It's possible, but I'm not seeing it anytime in the near future, because I think that everybody else is going to work to keep him very busy on the outside.
Yeah, in a time when they're cutting high-paid guys and signing low-paid guys, I don't think that would work into their little system right now. Maybe 5 years down the road, when he's a much bigger name or something.
And he's not the right size, right? He's not enormous,
right,
for main roster purposes. So PW Insider reported that the John Morrison face turn is the new direction for John Morrison. So it's not going to be like Morrison versus Mizz this week, and then they make up at the end and they're back together, and that's we move forward and move on. This is the new direction for John Morrison. So I'm excited, because I thought way back when they were on SmackDown and Miz and Morrison were both kind of vying for the championship that Braun Strowman had, the Universal Championship. I thought they could have pulled the trigger on Morrison. It would have been bold. It would have been different, but I think they could have made John Morrison the top guy back then. So I'll be interested to see. Now there's a whole lot more character development. He's kind of in the Matt Riddle territory, though, of the comedic guy. So we'll see where what legs he has.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, because, I love John Morrison, but I hate the Miz. So I want to be able to start fast-forwarding Miz segments again, and I could never do it because John Morrison was on it, and I love me some Johnny Drip Drip.
Yeah, especially now that he's all the things with the moist gimmick, hurting for a squirt and all that stuff. Yeah,
it doesn't get old.
No. At first, I was like, this is not working for me, but then it caught on. So, but Mustafa Ali and Mansoor, apparently they are going to be a babyface tag team going forward. That's from PW Insider. Got that scoop. So they got to get some good wins then. I mean, I don't know if we're going to see Mustafa Ali and Mansoor versus RK Bro anytime soon.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably because they're going to Saudi Arabia soon, so they got to set the precedent of them being baby faces before they try to get them cheered overseas.
Pretty sure that it might be Mansoor and Ali versus Amos in a handicap match.
That'd be fun. That would be real fun. As long as Amos wins, picks them both up and conks their heads together.
Brian and Andre taking exception with you, John, saying, how can you not like The Miz? He's a pro's pro. Although Brian saying The Miz winning the Universal Champion was just the wrong time. I think basically every time he's won the championship was the wrong time.
See, my thing about The Miz is never good unless he's got somebody next to him. Like for instance, the Miz Taraj, a.k.a. the B-Team, Maurice, Damian Sandow, Johnny Drip Drip. The only time The Miz is ever really relevant is when he's got somebody that next to him that's actually like entertaining us, in my opinion.
I would say I think Miz's best run was, and I don't remember exactly who he was wrestling, but when Daniel Bryan was on the shelf and Miz and Bryan were having those talking smack segments, I thought that was the strongest the Miz has ever been. And it might be because he was the Intercontinental Champion. He was on TV every week, and our world champion was absent. Brock Lesnar was not around, so he kind of had like one of the top titles.
Yeah, that was a time when I could have seen them throwing the title on him. But, you know, the way they did it this time, I mean, now that I know that he lost it right away, you know, I'm fine with it. But that was brutal to see him with that title again, man.
Yeah, transition champion to get it to Bobby. Yeah.
Yeah.
AEW announced a Saturday edition. The rest of my news is pretty much all AEW. They announced a Saturday edition of Dynamite. It's going to be on October 23rd. Now, what's interesting about this is it's right in the middle of the Jericho Cruise. Jericho Cruise is a 4-day cruise, and they put this Dynamite on the weekend. And a lot of the people that are going on the cruise initially got very upset and started reaching out to Jericho and to Sixth Man, who is the company that's organizing the cruise, because they're now afraid that all the AEW talent aren't going to be on the boat, and that's what they thought they were signing up for. So I think there's some work that AEW and Jericho and Sixth Man need to do to get everybody back on board. Otherwise, they're going to have a small revolt. And I don't think we need to see a boat capsize because the fans are upset that Moxley isn't there or something. So AEW also announced the Casino Battle Royal for All Out. It will be a women's battle royal this time, which is what people had thought and expected. Nyla Rose is the first competitor that was announced. Unfortunately, nobody really cares who the first competitor is. Everybody is interested in who is the last competitor, the Joker spot. And there's plenty of rumors. There's plenty of people available, John. I mean, you got the Iconics out there. You got Ruby Riott, tons and tons of people that are available to come out in that spot. Any thoughts on that?
My first thought was Ruby Riott, because we haven't seen her on TV yet. We just seen her doing stuff on the internet, you know, little vignettes of her own. But I feel like that could be it. Yeah,
that's where I am. I think that's the top prospect, I think, for that spot. And she yesterday put out a new video, a new vignette on Twitter. You can go see it. And this one, she steals a car. And I did note that the car had the New Jersey license plate, so I don't know if that's relevant. We know Dynamite is coming up from New Jersey at the Prudential Center, so we'll see.
Maybe it's Tessa Blanchard.
That would be a big swerve. Former Impact World Champion. Maybe she'll go after Christian Cage in the main event. AEW released a special look at the debut of CM Punk, and what's really cool about this, it's about a 12-minute video. It's available on their YouTube. In one side, it's this picture-in-picture, Andre. So on one side, you see the pictures of what you watched on television with CM Punk walking out and the pyro and all that stuff. In the second part, though, you see all the production that's going on in the back, and you see them producing the segment. So you see them shouting out the camera switches and the pyro and the talent come out and all. It's really fascinating if you've never seen that kind of thing before, which I really haven't, except for maybe in these kinds of clips. But to see that sausage getting made was fascinating. So I recommend people go out and check that. It's a 12-minute video, but I think it's probably the last 4 minutes that you really see all of that. So
you got me with the sausage getting made stuff. I wasn't expecting that.
Andre's saying that Tessa was working out for NWA Power. Now, I have not heard that, but I will dig into that myself. And Andre, you can shoot me a link of something that you're seeing, but I've not seen that, so that's interesting. I'll report on that tomorrow. And as of yesterday, my final headline, I guess, here is as of yesterday, Dynamite was about 964 tickets away from a sellout in Milwaukee tonight. The stadium set up for 5,600 fans. About 1,000 of the 4,600 that were already sold came after Punk was announced. So I guess Punk is moving tickets. It's hard to say. I'm sure a percentage of that was attributable to Punk, and a certain percent is attributable to the fact that people realize they're free next week and there's a show in town. So,
right.
On tonight's Dynamite, we have the Varsity Blondes versus the Lucha Bros. Winner is facing Jurassic Express on Friday. We have Red Velvet versus Jamie Hayter, Orange Cassidy versus Matt Hardy, Malachi Black versus Brock Anderson, CM Punk's Dynamite debut, Jon Moxley, Darby Allin, Eddie Kingston versus the Wingmen. Chris Jericho will address his future, and the Gun Club will face off against the Factory. That's QT Marshall, Aaron Solo, Nick Comoroto versus Austin, Billy, and Colton Gunn. Bart Gunn not invited. John, Chris Jericho addresses his future. This has got to be the angle, right? Where Chris Jericho comes out to do a promo and MJF interrupts and says, I won the feud. Why is Jericho talking? And then something happens that gets us to All Out, I would assume.
Yeah, then we get the career versus scarf match or something like that.
Oh, God.
No, I'm looking forward
to
what he's got to say, but I'm wondering how the hell they're going to get all this stuff in. You just announced 42 things for tonight.
Right. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 matches and 2 talking segments, so it's going to be fast paced. But Malachi Black versus Brock Anderson is going to be mostly Brock Anderson will come back from a commercial. Brock Anderson's in the ring already. Malachi Black does his entrance, and about one punch and a manhandle slam, and that match is going to be over, I think. So 25 seconds.
Manhandle slam, I love it. Everybody's so butthurt about Bianca. It's so crazy.
Andre asking if anybody knows the rating for the Punk episode last Friday. Yes, I do. It's 1.1 million, and it was a 0.53 in the demo. So a very, very strong episode for Friday night. And over 1 million viewers. That's great. Dynamite was nowhere close to that in that same slot. So good stuff. And Brian saying that CM Punk's not going to have a busy schedule like he had in WWE. That's true, and it's probably why he's there. He doesn't have to work a house show loops. He can show up on Wednesdays and some Fridays and some weekends. So,
isn't that all the stuff that he used to dog on Cena or on Brock Lesnar for, and Rock? And it's almost like when you can work less, you work less.
And then CM Punk versus the Switchblade. That'd be a good match from Brian. Yes, it would be. And the Forbidden Door's open, so you never know what's going to happen. All right. Well, with that said, John, anything you want to tell the fine people today? Any words of advice?
No, I just want to clarify my last week's words of advice when I said never trust a fart. And you're like, oh, we're going to get that story next week. There wasn't a story for that. That was the one I had in the holster in case we were running out of time. And we're kind of running out of time today. So that's what I'll leave you with today is my general life words of advice are don't trust a fart. It's not topical to anything that's happened to me in the past, in my adult life, basically. But yeah, that's one to teach your kids. I already teach my son that.
One thing I want to mention before we get out of here is that I'm going to a GCW Black Label Pro show in the coming weeks here, and there are some people on that card that I did not expect, and I'm just going to throw up the graphic real quick. The Powers of Pain are going to be teaming with Warhorse and Danhausen to face off, I think, against Nick Gage, Mance Warner, AJ Gray, and Matthew Justice. So fun that we're it's so fun that the Powers of Pain. I hope they don't trust a fart, but
is that like the Berserker?
It's the Barbarian and the Warlord.
Oh, the Barbarian and the Warlord. Yeah, the Berserker was Samoan, right? Or Tongan.
Yep. Andre asking about Adam Cole again. Why do you feel Adam Cole is resigning with WWE and moving to Raw? Couple of questions in there. I'm not sure what Adam Cole is going to do. What I've said Adam Cole I think probably should do is if they're offering him a huge contract with WWE, if I'm Adam Cole, I'd probably take it because you know what? Even if they release him 6 months from now, everybody that wanted him now is still going to want him then. So I think if I'm Adam Cole, I'm taking the money. So
absolutely, me too, man. Adam Cole is one of those guys that they invested a lot in NXT, but they still invested a lot in him. They gave him the longest reign ever, and they had him just dominate. He's the first North American champion, also.
Yep.
And he was the North American and the tag champ at the same time. Like all these things, these accolades they've given him aren't a mistake, and I think they realize what they have with him, and I don't think they're going to let him go.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, with that said, for John, I'm Ryan. Thank you for everybody who's watching live today and everybody who listens to this on demand. We will see you tomorrow. John DeConi will be here, and he's going to bring a pile of rumors for me to sort through. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you then.